In Cuba, the third tank at the old supertankers depot in the province of Matanzas also collapsed, according to island authorities. Colombian President Gustavo Petro officially began his administration by announcing that he will submit the tax reform to the Congress. In Russia, Kremlin warns that Ukrainian attacks on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant pose catastrophic danger. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Cuba, on Monday, the third tank at the supertankers oil depot in the Cuban province of Matanzas also collapsed, as informed by the island authorities. According to the governor of the province of Matanzas, Mario Sabines Lorenzo, after the fuel spilled from the second tank, the third tank's situation was further compromised in the early hours of the morning. Currently, there is little visibility because of the smoke surrounding the industrial zone, due to the fire in the vicinity areas. At this moment, according to the governor, Air Force helicopters are pouring water to prevent the fire from spreading to other areas. Cuban firefighters keep working to extinguish the blaze alongside Venezuelan and Mexican experts as they set a large hydraulic pump and assembled firefighting foam spraying.
Now, a little more clearly, we can explain that in fact, the risk we had announced actually occurred, and the fire in the second tank compromised the third one, which is now on fire, functioning basically as a clean torch or a stove. And that is what is happening right now, with very little visibility given the amount of smoke. So after the fire, we all saw what happened was that the content of tank number 2 spilled and increased the areas of fire and expanded by gravity and set the grass around aflame. That was the situation yesterday, very complex, with 3 tanks on fire, fuel pouring again from number 1 that functions also as a stove. So the area of fire of the 4 tanks is very wide, almost occupying 3 of them.
Cuban authorities and the firefighters continue to work on Monday to kill a fire at the Matanzas supertanked base after a third fuel tank collapse. At dawn, Revolutionary Armed Forces helicopters loaded water from the city's nearby bay and dropped it from the affected areas to smother the flames. Meanwhile, in the same context, the first secretary of the Communist Party and the president, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, praised the admirable work and performance of the helicopter pilots from the Revolutionary Armed Forces who keep flying over the darkest and the hottest area of the fire in Matanzas. The Cuban head of state stated that all those involved in the works to douse the blaze are an example of professionalism and determination. And China has sent its deepest condolences to the victims of the oil depot explosions in Matanzas, Cuba, and said it is ready to provide any needed assistance to the island.
Cuba are good friends, good comrades, and others. We want to send our deepest condolences to the victims of the accident and our sympathy to the bereaved families and the injured ones. The Red Cross Society of China has decided to provide emergency humanitarian assistance to the Cuban Red Cross Society, and China is ready to provide further help to Cuba.
And the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, called on Sunday for intensified efforts to save 10 workers trapped in a flooded coal mine in the northern state of Coahuila. Authorities said the miners had been carried out excavation work when they hit an adjoining area full of water. Relatives of the missing were becoming increasingly desperate 4 days after the mine flooded, fearing time is running out to bring them out alive. 400 soldiers and other personnel, including 6 military scuba divers, have joined the rescue efforts, but so far it has been too dangerous to enter the mine. 5 workers managed to escape from the crudely constructed mine in the initial aftermath of the disaster, but since then no survivors had been found.
president asked for speed in the work. He thanked the working groups that are inside the commission, the rescuers, the Red Cross, the paramedics, those from the prosecutor's office, and inside in some way working, collaborating. He thanked them and asked them to redouble their efforts to be able to find the miners alive. Just as I did, we stress that time is short and we need to do what is necessary.
Progressive candidate for the presidency of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, has responded to the calls for a coup by the president Jair Bolsonaro, who is a candidate for re-election with little chance, according to all opinion polls. The candidate of the extreme right called on the military and the civilians to take to the streets next September 7th, less than 4 weeks before the first round of elections. Lula da Silva has said that precisely when Brazil celebrates 200 years of its struggle for national independence, will they have dictatorships or military coups? The union leader described the behavior of the President Bolsonaro as criminal, adding that it was very similar to his management of the country, with which he has exposed the risks and pressures the sovereignty and democracy of the nation. And Brazilians keep facing food insecurity on a daily basis and with no governmental help. This was the story of Miguel Barros. A week ago, the cupboards of Miguel's family humble concrete shack were empty. Miguel made a sad call earlier last week to Brazil's police emergency services to report he and his family had nothing to eat after his mother had been feeding her 8 children cornmeal and water for 3 days. By fortune, after case, officers and a storage owner donated supplies to Miguel, and then his story went viral. Now, Miguel's 7 siblings and his single mom have a well-food stash kitchen, but who knows for how long. Brazil appeared on the latest edition of the United Nations Hunger Map with 28.9% of the population living in moderate or severe food insecurity, a setback from a country that had been removed from the map in 2014 under the administration former President Dilma Rousseff. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Colombian President Gustavo Petro officially began his administration by announcing that he will submit the tax reform to the Congress. This reform, which will be focused on social justice, aims at raising 50 trillion pesos by increasing the income tax of those who earn the most and combating tax evasion. This plan pretends to get funds to aid the most vulnerable population. The Minister of Finance, José Antonio Campo, informed that the project will seek to increase the income tax for individuals with income over 10 million pesos. In addition, the official pointed out that it is expected to control evasion, which could be between 50 and 80 billion pesos. During the inauguration process, Colombian President Gustavo Petro called for the unity of Colombia and the struggle for stability and peace in the country.
Today begins the Colombia of the possible. We're here against all odds, against a story that said we were never going to govern. We also call on all the armed to lay down their weapons in the nebula of the past, to accept legal benefits and exchange for peace. I don't want 2 countries, just as I don't want 2 societies. I want a strong, fair, and united Colombia.
And the United States Senate approved what has been described as the star bill of President Joe Biden, which was decided by the tie vote by Vice President Kamala Harris. The law includes fiscal measures against climate change and the cost of medicines. President Biden had warned that the Senate will decide favorably, and it was so. The legislators who spent the first weekend of August in the Capitol voted in a marathon session on the Inflation Reduction Bill, a name that responds to the political strategy of the Democrats in the face of the midterm elections. With this law, they hope to mobilize $430 billion in 10 years and generate revenues of about $740 billion, although it is far from the amount initially requested by the President Joe Biden. It was Vice President Kamala Harris who broke the tie in the Senate, which was split 50-50 between Republicans and Democrats. At least 9 people were injured in a shooting outside the Cincinnati bar in the United States. The shooting took place outside Mr. Pitiful's bar, a popular nightlife area. According to police records, most of the victims suffered wounds to their lower halves. Those injured were 8 men and 1 woman ranging in age from 23 to 47. Police set a fire out at the bar between 2 groups, and at least 2 people involved brandished firearms and shot at each other. All 9 people treated at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center had been released. Now we'll move on to other topics. In Russia, Kremlin warns that the Ukrainian attacks on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant pose a catastrophic danger. Igor Konashenkov, the spokesperson for the Russian Defense Ministry, denounced the attacks carried out by the armed forces of Ukraine, threatening catastrophic consequences for a vast territory, including Europe. The spokesperson stated that the offensives against the facility are a potential and extremely dangerous activity, while expressing the hope that the countries that have absolute influence over the Ukrainian leadership will use it to exclude this kind of attacks. He also pointed out that there is no more than 400 meters distance between the place of impact of the shrapnel warheads and the active power unit. A large ship carrying grain from Ukraine reached the port of Derins in northwestern Turkey on Monday, carrying 12,000 tons of corn, leaving the Ukrainian port of Chornomorsk. 6 more ships carrying agricultural cargo held up by the war in Ukraine received authorization on Sunday to leave the country's Black Sea coast. The loaded vessels were cleared from Chornomorsk and Odessa, according to the Joint Coordination Center, which oversees an international deal intended to get some 20 million tons out of grain out of Ukraine. 4 of the carriers cleared Sunday were transporting more than 219,000 tons of corn. The People's Liberation Army continued to carry out further military drills around Taiwan on Monday. The military's Eastern Command said in a statement that the live-fire drills, which included practical exercises and training in the sea and airspace around Taiwan, focused on organizing joint anti-submarine and sea assault operations. Beijing has deployed fire jets, warships, and ballistic missiles as a practice for blockade and potentially ultimate invasion. The military drills started last Thursday in response to a visit of United States House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan against warnings issued by Beijing.
Firmly safeguard China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, resolutely contain the U.S. efforts to use Taiwan to suppress China, and firmly smash the Taiwan's authorities' illusion of gaining independence through the U.S. At the same time, China is also upholding international law and norm of international relations, especially the most important principle of international law stipulated in the UN Charter.
China and Bangladesh pledged to strengthen partnership and deepen cooperation as Chinese State Council Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited Dhaka and met with Bangladeshi government authorities. When meeting with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Foreign Minister Wang said China and Bangladesh enjoy a strong friendship forged by the older generation of the leaders of the two countries, which features a deep historical, social foundation and profound public support, and both sides have always trusted, respected, supported, and helped each other. The Chinese State Councillor also noted that this country is willing to join the Belt and Road Initiative with Bangladesh's Vision 2041, a shared development experiences and deeper cooperation in infrastructure, digital economy, and clean energy. For her part, Hasina said Bangladesh regards China as an important partner in maintaining peace and seeking common development. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Monday, the government of Qatar reported that after 5 months of negotiations, Chad's Transitional Military Council and the rebel groups agreed to sign a historic peace deal. Doha hosts the signing ceremony, to which the highest representatives of the African Union, various regional organizations, and ambassadors from diplomatic missions are summoned. The agreement, which includes a commitment to a ceasefire, the cessation of military operations by the Transitional Council, and the initiation of a disarmament process, paves the way for the start of a broad national reconciliation dialogue. Nearly 40 political movements have signed the document. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antony, thanked the government for its role as a mediator. And the Egypt brokered truce between Israel and the Palestine resistance forces in Gaza has concluded. The recent intense bombing has left at least 44 people dead, including 15 children. When Palestine recorded 43 deaths, 6 of which were children, and more than 300 wounded, Egypt negotiated a ceasefire between the Ministry of Defense and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. After Mohammed al-Hindi, the head of the group's political department, confirmed the Tel Aviv reaffirmed it under conditions of responding forcefully in case of a violation. The truce began at 11:30 p.m. local time on Sunday, despite a series of Israeli raids and attacks on the last minute. On Monday, thousands of Shiite Muslims supporting Yemen's Houthis gathered in the capital Sanaa to mark Ashura and to show support for Palestine and people under Israel bombing. The marchers mark Ashura, a 10-day period commemorating the killing of Prophet Muhammad's grandson Ayman Hussein in the Battle of Karbala in 680. The massive rally also comes in support of Palestinians following a 3-day deadly conflict between Israel and Islamic Jihad militants in the Gaza Strip. Starting on Friday, Israel had launched a heavy aerial and artillery bombardment of Islamic Jihad positions in Gaza. In addition to those killed, and health officials said over 300 people were wounded in the Palestinian enclave, which is run by the Islamist group Hamas. And millions of Kenyans prepare to vote in Tuesday's presidential elections, hoping the polls run in peace as tension mounts. Tuesday's polls will see a tight race between Deputy President William Ruto and Raila Odinga, a veteran opposition leader now backed by the ruling party. With the specter of post-election unrest looming over the polls, many welcome a final pledge by both men on Sunday to respect the result and not trigger a repeat on the violence that followed votes in 2007 and 2017. The campaign has been dominated by rigging claims, but both candidates called for a peaceful vote. No Kenyan presidential election has gone unchallenged in the last 20 years, and the discord has previously led to violence, either between communities or at the hands of police. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in South Africa to begin his 3-nation tour of the continent. His arrival in Africa followed his trip to Asia, where he visited Cambodia and the Philippines. The U.S. Secretary of State visited the Hector Peterson Memorial in Soweto Township on the outskirts of Johannesburg, where he laid a wreath at the memorial, which honors the student killed in 1976 when protesting South Africa's regime racist of apartheid. Upon completing his tour of South Africa, Blinken is expected to travel to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.